Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and today I wanted to share with you guys my thoughts and opinions on the Deadlock protocol update. This is the first time that I've done like an official, here are my opinions on an update video, apart from Railjack, for example, but Railjack was kind of like an outlier, but I think I'm going to make this like a new series that we do on the channel, just whenever an update comes out, and make like a retrospective or thoughts and opinions video on the update as a whole, just to get my thoughts and feelings out there. In the past, myself and many other Warframe content creators have been accused of being, not critical or too critical. So hopefully this video manages to strike a good balance between being critical and then also praising the content that DE released. With that being said though, I really enjoyed the Deadlock protocol update. Everything that they gave us in this update is more of what I would like to see personally added into Warframe in the future. I'm not a big fan of open worlds or Railjack or anything like that, but just this lore bite, the fact that we got a new Warframe, the fact that we got multiple weapons and kick guns, and we had a reward boss, and just like an entire tile set was remastered and looks a lot cooler, that's right up my alley. I like it whenever they expand on the star chart in a meaningful way. And if you look at it from a developmental standpoint, this is part of the process for reworking the first impressions that you get from Warframe, because this is a tile set and also a boss that you're going to experience pretty early on in the game. So if you're experiencing a really well put together tile set and a really cool immersive boss fight, which the Jackal is now, then your first impressions of Warframe are going to be pretty damn high. Not that they're not already, because for most people, like if your first impression of Warframe wasn't high, you probably wouldn't have continued playing the game, right? But now it's going to be even better. My fear is though that because they are raising like that quality standard even higher now with these remastered tile sets and stuff like that, and making that first impression a lot better, I hope that they're able to sort of like maintain this level of quality moving forward, and also doing it on a frequent basis. That's been a concern of mine for Warframe ever since the second Dream came out, because like the second Dream was an amazing quest, but then the time it took between the second Dream and then the War Within to come out, that was really concerning to me, because like it was cool that the second Dream was this new immersive thing that we got, but then because we had to wait, I think maybe months or even years for the War Within to come out, then it kind of ruined the entire lore story vibe about the second Dream and the War Within. It felt kind of disconnected, if you get what I mean, simply because there's this big gap. So personally, what I would prefer to see whenever it comes to Warframe updates is just small sprinkles, like little breadcrumbs of lore sprinkled here and there in like the star chart, implemented in a meaningful way, which sort of ties the whole story together. If you've been around with Warframe for a while, you know that there's this big disconnect between the start of the game and then also the middle of the game, because whenever you get to Uranus, that's whenever the game starts to sort of pick up, because that's whenever you're introduced to like the meaningful lore behind the Lotus and the Warframes and stuff like that, and that's where you really begin to learn. And the fact that they don't show that stuff from the get-go is pretty damaging to the game's reputation, because a very casual player, like somebody who's never heard of Warframe before and somebody who isn't bothered to sort of like look up guides and sort of research the game, they're going to jump into the game, realize that there's nothing really too immersive within the game for them, and then they're going to dip out, right? It's like DE Steve says in a lot of his interviews, like whenever you sign up to play Warframe and you play it for the first time, you're subconsciously making this decision on whether or not the game is for you, and if the answer is yes, then you're going to stick around, and if the answer is no, you're just not going to stick around at all. And an even bigger concern moving forward is how they talk about wanting to rehash the first impressions of the game or revamp the new player experience. They've also stated in podcasts and interviews and stuff like that that it doesn't matter how much they change up the beginning of the game, the retention rate sort of stays the same. So whenever they announced in that podcast between Shy, Brozyme, Tac Potato, and DK and DE Scott that they were going to be focusing on reworking or rehashing the newer player experience to sort of like make that first impression better, I sort of questioned that decision based on things that they said in the past. So from my perspective, the Deadlock protocol is kind of like a fan servicey update. Like, it does myself as a fan the service of making the game that I really enjoy look a lot prettier in the Corpus tile set. So, you know, whenever I am playing the game to farm up a prime part or something like that, and playing through a Corpus tile set, then I've got the pleasure of playing through this new advanced pretty looking tile set, which is really cool. For a newer player, then you've got that better first impression, which is always good. And then we also have that nice quest, which is linked into the Warframe Protea, which is really good. I want to see a lot more of that. I want to see like Warframes have quests come along with them. So for example, you know, we got a very small quest with Gara, nowhere near as good as the Deadlock Protocol, because the Deadlock Protocol hits on so many different narrative beats, right? It explains the origins of Protea, it explains, you know, the backstory behind Nefanyo and the Corpus and his dad and stuff like that, and, you know, these new enemies that are introduced. Like, I don't want to spoil it if you're watching this video. My phone just went off. I don't want to spoil it if you're watching this video without jumping into the update yet, but it was a pretty good story update from a lore perspective, from a narrative storytelling perspective, right? And that's what I really like, because it just sort of solidifies its place within the Warframe universe. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that a quest like the Deadlock Protocol really solidifies its spot within the Warframe universe, simply because it hits on so many story beats, right? So you have the fact that you've got that narrative between Nefanyo and his dad, you've got the explanation of Protea's origin and stuff like that. So if they could structure every single Warframe related quest in that way, where they talk about the origin of the newest Warframe, and then they also talk about, you know, something that is somewhat but not entirely related to the frame itself, like just explaining the rest of the game, like the universe, for example, that would be a cool way to structure your Warframe quests going forward, right? And that's just something that I want to see personally from every single Warframe that is introduced, because whenever you release a Warframe with a quest attached to it, that Warframe immediately becomes more memorable, right? Protea, as on her own, like, she's not the best frame in the game. She's fun to play, but because I had such a good time playing through that quest, listening to the voice acting of Nefanyo and Yuriko and stuff like that, you know, I'm just going to look at Protea in a different way, because I just, like, immediately link her to that quest, and that just makes the whole experience a lot more fun. So to talk a little bit about the quest, you mainly play through the quest in the new Corpus tile sets, and then there's another tile set on top of that, which you don't get to stay in for a long time, but you are going to have to go back to it to farm up Protea at a later date. So the Corpus tile set looks amazing, no surprises there. The new tile set looks pretty good as well. It's not like a tile set, it's more like an arena, I guess you could say. So the new arena is pretty good. The voice acting is really good. The narrative and the storytelling is also really good. It could be better, it could be longer, that's what I would say. Like, I was able to complete the quest in about an hour, which for a free-to-play game, don't get me wrong, an hour's worth of content is pretty good. The major concern there is, you know, how frequently can they release that type of content? How frequently can we get an update that is going to have a quest that can last us an hour? That's the number one concern whenever you talk to anybody within the Warframe sort of like fan club. I don't know why I call it a fan club. With all of that being said, I want to challenge you guys to think about the quest in a different way, right? So you could look at the quest in a sense that it was developed solely to introduce newer players to this new tile set and to ease veteran players into this tile set as well, right? Because the quest makes you play an interception mission, a mobile defense mission, and a spy mission, and during these missions, it's basically showing you things within the tile set that you can interact with, right? And the different little enemy which is going to run around that you have to kill to get a token to farm up Protea. So it does a good job at introducing players to this new content of the game, but from a gameplay perspective, it is more of the same, right? So that is one of the biggest challenges whenever it comes to developing any type of content, be it videos or a game, for example. You've got the people out there who like familiarity, I can barely say that word, and then you have people out there who like it whenever they are challenged, right? So whenever they're forced to think a little bit and try a little bit harder than they normally would. So I would consider myself to be a player who likes to be challenged, and whenever you sort of like feed me the same stuff over and over and over again, I tend to get bored and I tend to like not enjoy my time, right? So whenever I was playing for the quest and I was like, oh, it's an interception mission, oh, it's a spy mission, oh, it's a mobile defense mission, I'm just like, these are missions that I already do on a daily basis, just with a different coat of paint. And whenever we're talking in the context of spy missions, it is literally just the old Corpus spy missions, just with a different coat of paint with the new tile set. To some people, you might enjoy that, you might think it's great, but to other people, they might have been expecting a little bit more. I was expecting just a tiny bit more, right? So like whenever they released the Uranus tile set, which is the one that has the submersible part to it, we got new spy vaults and stuff like that, and I thought that was great. But now that we're reworking these Corpus tile sets, I would like to see more spy vaults that are new, just like the ones that we had in Jupiter, for example. Just a little bit more variety there whenever it comes to the spy vaults. And I know that is probably like a controversial take because people already don't like Spy as it is. They think that the Spy vaults are pretty convoluted. Spy is actually one of my favorite game modes in the game. I do it a lot because you get a ton of XP from it if you stealth it, and I'm just good at them. So, there's a bias there, of course. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen something new, put it that way, in the gameplay department whenever it comes to the quest. Like I said, there is a new thing that you do, but it's more of a one and done thing, right? You do it, you farm up Protea, and there's no reason to go back to doing that thing past farming Protea. I've heard that they're working on like a reason to go back right now, but that's very hard to sort of incentivize a player to go to a place to do something, right? Like if there's other places that you can do this thing which are more accessible and probably a lot easier. I think that whenever I reflect on it, the reason that I enjoy the Jupiter tileset remaster over this tileset remaster is simply because the Jupiter tileset remaster was designed with the movement of the game in mind, right? Like there's big empty spaces that you need to traverse just by utilizing your bullet jump and your aim glide and your rolling and stuff like that, where this tileset is more beginner friendly, and like it should be, simply because it's in a very early planet. But I would still like to see more elements being implemented into the tile sets of the game where you have to use parkour. Like at the minute, all we really use parkour for is going for a mission really fast, right? And like even then, some of our movement abilities are far better than just parkouring for a mission and bullet jumping and stuff like that. Like whenever you pick up Gauss, whenever you pick up Titania, with Gauss you use your 1, with Titania you use your 4, and then you're faster than everything in the game. Nova, you can use your wormhole, stuff like that. So just giving more environments where it makes sense for the player to actually bullet jump, and well, I mean, it makes sense in every single tile set to bullet jump to get through it fast, but you know what I mean, like just more platforming would be better, and I think appreciated by a lot of players because it adds just another little element to the game. Like you have to pay attention to where you're jumping and maybe make it so that there's lava pits below the player that actually deals damage, right? Of course, these lava pits won't immediately kill you or anything like that because you're a Warframe and we've got this power fantasy stuff going on. You'd be able to get out of it by bullet jumping up, and maybe it applies like a burn effect to you or something like that, or you can use your operator to dash up or something along those lines. But just some more environmental damage and make the game a little bit more platformer-y, if that makes sense, just to add that extra little element of gameplay so it's not just the same thing over and over and over again. I probably got way ahead of myself there, considering this is like a early Planet tileset rework, but that's, again, just something that I would like to see more of in general. More reasons to make use of the parkour mechanics that we have in the game in a meaningful way, right? Like to avoid death or to get something like, the cool void trials that you have to do to get the Iton sculptures and stuff like that. I really like those things, but I acknowledge that that type of content is probably really hard to produce on a frequent basis because, let's be real here, you have to sit out and plan these routes and stuff like that. You have to set up these traps, and it's probably really complicated, so I can understand why we don't get them really frequently. Whenever it comes to the new frame and the new weapons, I really enjoy the frame. We're still going along this trend of introducing frames that are more fun than viable, if that makes any sense. So it's not like we're getting Octavias or Sterins or Equinox or Ivaras with every single update. We're just getting frames that are designed specifically to be fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that more players are going to immediately say, well, this is going to be a frame that just sits in my inventory and collects dust because it is not as useful as X or Y over Warframe, right? And you can't really fault them for that because Warframe is a game that is about being efficient and about optimizing your kit and stuff like that. So much so to the point where we optimize the fun out of the game, right? That's a popular quote that I like to throw about whenever we're talking about Warframe. But Protea, if you judge her on your own, on her own, and don't compare her to, you know, the other frames in the game, she's a relatively fun Warframe, right? The one is all about throwing out these free grenades, which are going to make sort of like fields of slash procs, which is really cool for locking down an area. You can also hold down your one to throw out these balls, which are going to give you overshields whenever you pick them up, which that's okay. I don't use it a lot because I don't really care about shields in this game because we're just so tanky and powerful, and the content that I play right now, we don't necessarily need to go overboard in the defensive category because enemies aren't living long enough to deal any meaningful damage to me anyway. The second ability, where you bring out this little turret, is probably one of the most underwhelming abilities in her kit, simply because it basically deals chip damage to an enemy that is like above level 60. It's not that great. You sort of have to be constantly using your 2 to get any meaningful damage out of it. It doesn't scale well at all, and the thing is, the duration is so short on it that you're spending more energy than it's worth at that point to get any meaningful damage out of the thing. So if we were given the ability to throw on secondary weapon mods onto the little drone, or primary weapon mods or whatever, just a way to buff up its damage on its own, that would be cool, and that would make it a lot better. It might be too powerful then, but you know, that's fine because the rest of Protea's kit isn't insane anyway, so these buffs are definitely things that they could and should implement. The third ability is her little dispenser, which is a good ability if you just need to get health, ammo, energy. Because we have so many ways to get all of these resources back, it's kind of redundant, right? You can just put down a plate, or you can use Energizing Dash, or Vazarin, or some other player can use an ability or something along those lines. So the third ability is okay. It's not spectacular though. And then the fourth ability is kind of the same thing, just with a different coat of paint, right? You press 4, you mark a point in history, and then you run around. You can spend your ammo, your energy, you can take damage, you can do whatever, and then after the duration of your 4 has run out, you're going to make an explosion where you're standing, and then it's going to rewind time. It's rewind time, Will Smith, and you're going to just go back to that state where you originally pressed 4. Of course, you're going to lose the energy that you needed to cast your 4, but then you're going to get all that energy that you spent casting your 1, 2, 3, all the ammo that you spent, you know, shooting enemies and stuff like that. You're going to get all of that back, which is really cool. So she's a fun frame. She would be about maybe a C or a B tier on my tier list, I would say, if you know, like grading your frames with a tier list. So she's all right. And then whenever it comes to the weapons, I'm just so indifferent about weapons in a Warframe now. It doesn't really matter to me whenever it comes to weapons and stuff like that. Yeah, they're cool. Like the Stala is nice. It's a semi-automatic rifle. I can't remember if I get the hold down trigger with it, but it's a primary weapon. It deals a decent amount of damage. I built it for hybrid crit status, viral hunt munitions bane, and it's also got an alt fire which you can shoot out like an explosive round, which is really cool. It's okay, not going to be a primary that I use a lot. I've got 6 format in it. The Velox is a really cool secondary pistol. It's really fast. It goes Burt. It's really cool. I like it, but it's not going to replace the likes of my Tomb Finger, for example. And then we've got the Zorus and the other Gunblade, which the name escapes me right now. The Zorus is an interesting one because you literally don't have to run combo duration mods on it, which is really cool. It just lets you run another element, like a third element, instead of just running corrosive or viral. So you can run corrosive and heat or viral and heat. So that's cool as well. But yeah, like I said, I'm just so indifferent about new weapons being added into the game now because there's so many different weapons in the game at this point. People are going to pick and choose their favorites, and then that's going to be it. And then I sort of view these weapons as weapons that people are going to pick up for the mastery. You're either going to like them or you're going to dislike them, and whether or not you like them is going to determine if you put format into them. How would I improve Protea? I would make it so that you could mod the turret on her second ability, and also make it so that the duration of the second ability is going to extend per every single enemy hit with diminishing returns, right? So then it would last a lot longer, and then you wouldn't need to spam it as much to get meaningful damage out of it. And then whenever it comes to her passive, which I didn't actually talk about, the passive, basically whenever you throw down 4 of your abilities, you're going to get a bonus 100% power strength on your next cast. If they made it so you got bonus 100% power strength and bonus 100% power duration, range, efficiency, then it would be a lot cooler. And there's really no reason to not, you know, do that, because the frame herself, she's not amazing, right? She's not insane, and that isn't going to be game breaking. It's just going to make the experience of playing Protea a lot more enjoyable. Whenever it comes to the third ability, you can make it so that it drops your health orbs, energy orbs, ammo a lot quicker, because it's quite slow at the minute, at least in my opinion. And then the fourth ability, I'm not too sure how you could improve it without sort of like reworking it or something, because I don't know, it's okay. Like, I really like it, but I just feel like it could be better in some way. I don't know. Like, if they were to improve it so that, like, let's say another additional passive would be, if you died, and this would be on a cooldown by the way, if you died, you could like rewind time back to a part where you had like full health or something like that. But then the problem there would be on the technical side, where they would have to record every single like little movement that you make, and then that would probably be a little bit too overwhelming on like a hardware component like RAM, for example, or something like that, because it would have to be constantly logging you know, what you're doing, how much energy you have, how much ammo you have, stuff like that. So you know, I think the 4 could be improved in some way. I'm just not too sure how. Maybe make it just have a longer duration base, and maybe make the range and the damage that it deals bigger, I guess. I don't know. That's what I would maybe do, and then I would call it a wash at that. You know, she's a fun frame as she stands right now, and you know, there's not too much I would do to her to change her. But then whenever it comes to the weapons and just weapon design in general in Warframe, I would like to see weapons more like the Zorus, where they sort of have a gimmick to them, but not too gimmicky, where it becomes something like the Miter, right? So like, if you're going to give a weapon a gimmick, make sure that it's baked into the weapon. Make sure that we don't need to have an augment mod for it, like the Miter. So the Miter's gimmick is the fact that we can pop nullifier bubbles with it, implying we have a mod equipped to it. So if you could give a weapon some sort of gimmick to make it better, so maybe the explosive charge shot on the Stauta, I think I called it the Stala earlier, but something like that, just to make it a little bit better and more memorable, a little bit more useful. If you could do that with every single weapon, I know it's easier said than done, but then that would make weapons more interesting, because like I said, to me right now, weapon releases in Warframe, I'm just indifferent. You know, the last really popular primary weapon that was released was the Kuva Brahma, and that thing was just broken. Probably still is broken, even though they nerfed it this patch. But, you know, I don't like the fact that a weapon needs to be borderline broken for it to get traction, if you know what I mean. Admittedly, whenever it comes to the kit guns, I haven't tried all of them yet, but that's because, like I said, I'm just pretty much indifferent about weapons in Warframe at this point, because we are so powerful. It just it takes the spark out of like crafting new weapons because of how powerful we are in the game right now. So those are going to be things that I get at a later date. It's cool that we got the primary kit guns finally, but my number one criticism would be like, why didn't that come with Fortuna to begin with, right? Like, here we're gonna get into the more critical negative side of the video, where I'm like, okay, this quest was cool and everything, but it's like an hour's worth of content. We got kit guns, which we probably should have had, you know, a while ago, and a lot of people are gonna say that this frame is just gonna collect dust in their inventory. So I, for one, totally understand people who would consider that mentality towards this update to be really entitled or whiny, but what you have to ask yourself is, was this update worth my time? And the answer is going to be different for everyone because the amount of enjoyment that you get out of Warframe update is subjective, right? So you might not be super amazed by this new update simply because, you know, you're somebody like me who likes it when things are different and you're challenged and you're intrigued, right? The intriguing part about this update for me was the story and the fact that, you know, they managed to weave the story of Nefanyo and Protea together. That was cool. But then the rest of the update is kind of just same old, right? So that is like the most critical thing I can say about it, right? That is with, of course, the tile set and the music and the voice acting aside, all of those three things, those are amazing. Was that three things? I can't remember. But those things, voice acting, music, just general presentation, is really done. It's always done well in Warframe, you know? So I can't really be too critical of like the presentation on its own, but it's just from a gameplay perspective. Do you find this game enjoyable? Are you enjoying your time playing the game? If no, why not? And that's just a question that you have to ask yourself as a player because everybody's opinion is going to be different. I do genuinely enjoy the gameplay of Warframe. I think that the movement in this game is like no other, right? And it honestly is. It's really just unique to this game. There's not a lot of games out there that have movement that is as smooth as Warframe. So, you know, I enjoy the gameplay for that reason, and that's why I am pushing for, you know, more platformer-y tile sets to be added into the game. So there's another bias of my own in there. So, you know, if they were to add more platformer-y stuff, I would enjoy the gameplay a lot more. But whenever you feed me same old, like spy mission, interception mission, capture mission, whatever, that's whenever you start to lose me. And I'm kind of like, I'll wait until other people play it and then they can tell me if it's worth my time. And even then, I'm only going to listen to the people who I trust within the Warframe community whenever it gets to that point, right? So I'm not going to be the guy who stands here and tells you if this update is worth checking out because, again, the answer is going to be different for everybody. I think an even bigger question that is on the mind of a lot of veteran players is, was the development time of this update worth it, right? Because we are in this sort of like just really bad state with Warframe where it's taking big chunks of time between updates and then it's kind of like a 50-50 chance on whether or not the update is good or not, right? So you compare this update to Operation Scarlet Spear and this update looks like it was made by God in comparison to Scarlet Spear. I was genuinely impressed with the presentation and the content within this update, but that's probably because I had such a bad experience with Scarlet Spear and my expectations are a lot lower now. So it's funny because whenever I think of a Warframe update now, I remind myself of that game Remnant from the Ashes. At the time, Remnant from the Ashes seemed like an amazing game and I really enjoyed it. But now, like after I've played it and I look back on it, I'm realizing, you know, that wasn't anything too spectacular, right? We were just excited about Remnant from the Ashes because we literally had nothing else to do and things that were being released as of recent, whenever that game came out, were just really bad. So that game seemed amazing in comparison. And I feel like that's kind of happening here with Warframe. That's not to bag or undermine the effort that went into this update because, like I said, presentation is on point, Protea is fun, the new weapons are good, and of course the new Jackal Bossfight. Dude, I love the Jackal Bossfight. Like, that is the coolest thing within this update, hands down, because again, presentation is good, narrative is good, combat is good, although it could be a little bit better, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but the Jackal Bossfight is pretty damn good. So the question that you're probably asking yourself as you watch this video is, all right, Flynn, if I stopped playing the game maybe a few months ago, is it worth me re-downloading or logging back into the game just for this update alone? And that answer totally depends on whether or not you expect to stop playing again within the space of 3 days, right? So if you're just jumping on to experience the quest and then log out again and then just wait for another update, yeah, totally, definitely. Like, this is totally worth logging in for just to experience the quest. But if you're the type of person who's expecting like a ton of content to just play through and grind through, then you want to stay on a longer break. That being said, though, they have said in a little announcement that they did where DE Steve recorded himself, they delayed TennoCon until August, and they are intending to ship what they show whenever it comes to whatever they show off at TennoCon. So I'm hoping that it's the new war, but even then, that is probably going to be like an hour or two worth of content, unless they go down the second dream route and they release, a new Warframe, new weapons, new tile set, new mods, and an entirely new system that they just haven't been talking about yet. If they go down that route, then I'll be like, hell yeah, 110% worth logging in and farming up and grinding this new system and stuff like that. Because I remember DE Scott said in the podcast between Shy, DK, Teeter, and Bruzheim that they were taking another look at Focus. So hopefully the new war gives us something new whenever it comes to Focus, because like they've said in the past, it is kind of a neglected system at this point, and I would like to see some kind of expansion. So hopefully new war August, hopefully meaningful content to grind up in August, new frame, new weapons, new mods, and something to invest into, such as an extension to the Focus system. That would be cool. But again, just because this Deadlock Protocol update was good, don't get your expectations too high. That's the mistake that everybody makes. DE will release something which is all right, and then they have these really high expectations, and then they go into it, and then they get really disappointed. So, and then you have everybody else who's like, it's a free game, you can't expect too much, and it's just kind of like this back and forth of DE doing something that just sort of like hits the ball at the park, and then just releasing something lackluster. So we just have to wait and see, because the last mainline story quest, the Sacrifice, not gonna lie, it was all right, but the ending pissed me off because of the cliffhanger. And then we've just been getting our prologues here and there. The prologues are all right, but it's because they're just so, I want to say, erratically placed around the game that the continuity there is sort of broken, if that makes sense. So it's like, oh, here's a prologue, and oh, there's another prologue, and it's like, oh, two prologues, and it's just like, if you're gonna make a story thing, like add it into the game, make sure that it's accessible and like easily noticed, and it's got some form of like continuity to it. Like maybe plan to release a story bite like maybe every 2 months or something, like if they release something decent story-wise every 2 months, like just small little bites that were accessible and made sense, then a lot more people would be a lot happier. So there's not really much more I can say about the update. It was a solid update, and it's going to keep your attention for about, I want to say maybe between 3 and 5 days, depending on the type of player you are. That's how long it's going to take you to do all of the content. But yeah, it was all right. Like there's not a lot of things that I can complain about other than everything that sort of surrounds it, right? Like how long is it going to take for us to get another update that is like this? That type of thing is really the only thing that I can sort of complain about. And maybe like how much you value this update as a veteran player, for example. If you're a veteran player who's listening in this video just to hear, my opinion and my thoughts and stuff like that, because like I mentioned beforehand, whether or not you enjoy this update is subjective. It's going to depend on, your standards and what level of quality you expect to see from Digital Extremes. I still think that the best thing that they showed, or the best thing that they did with this update, was the Jackal Bossfight, because they made this arena, they made this really cool, cute introduction to the boss fight, and they incorporated the Parazon into the boss fight and these cool animations and stuff like that. And they really just played that piece of content on its own to their strengths, and that's something that I want DE to do a lot more. Do what you're good at. Don't be overly ambitious. Don't try these new things just because they can make headlines. Just do what you're good at, and if you do what you're good at, you're gonna see like sustained good growth, instead of going for these massive spikes of growth that are things like Plains of Eidolon and Fortuna and stuff like that. Just focus in on what you're good at. Make your game really pretty. Just make your game really smooth, fun to play, engaging from the moment you start it up until you finish the star chart. And then once you do that there, start to focus on other things, right? Make your game engaging all the way through. Fix these things up. Take the time to fix your game, because people are going to hang around, right? Like, Warframe is a game that is constantly going to have a new audience. That's why, you know, Warframe YouTubers like myself, Bros, I'm Tactical Potato, even though, you know, we might not post super frequently, we can still sort of be relevant because there's always new people checking out the game, you know? So we're always going to have a new audience, new people coming through, just like DE are still going to have, you know, new people coming through to their game, checking it out, because you've got these people who are just becoming teenagers who are like, I've got no money, I want to play games, Call of Duty's boring, so I'm going to see what's free. Oh, hey, there's this ninja game called Warframe that's got a lot of stuff to do. I'll check that out, I'll learn that, and then that's what I'm going to do instead of my homework. So, you know, it's got that audience going for it, and there's always going to be new people coming into it. So I don't think that the game is going to die. I think it's always going to have an audience. Veteran players, new players alike, if you just fix up your game from point one to the finish point, get that star chart fixed up, make it really engaging, then we can go from there. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button below, subscribe for more Warframe content, and I will see you guys in the next video.